Hi, my name is Carl Schone. Some years ago, I had an experience that again reminded me how powerful God is and how He is always available to us, but most especially during times of crisis. I was a new scuba diver, and I had joined a trip of folks going to Morehead City to dive on a sunken submarine that was down about 110 feet. When we arrived and got settled in, I noticed that the seas were really quite high and there was a storm coming in. The next morning when we got out to get to the boat to begin the dive, the seas were between 6 and 10 feet high swells. But the rest of the crew seemed unconcerned, and so we all piled onto the boat. And in fact, our boat plus two others left port in order to go dive on the sunken submarine. Three of us anchored around the sub area. There was a float with a rope that we were to dive into the water and grab, and the rope would guide us down to where the submarine was. This was all new to me as a young diver, but others seemed nonplussed and jumped in, particularly those with spear guns. And I learned earlier that it was very wise to let people with spear guns get into the water before you and let them get ahead of you. When I jumped into the water, I grabbed the rope and started to descend, and my scuba mask began to fill with water. Not an unusual circumstance, and early on we're taught the drill and how to clear water out of the mask, and I began to do so, but that required me to put both hands on my mask. That meant I let go of the rope that was guiding me down. Well, the seas not only being high, there was a strong current, and immediately I was swept away from the rope. And this meant that I really lost control of where I was in the ocean. My training kicked in. I had been taught that most often strong currents abate when you get down, so I dove deeper and deeper and deeper. As I got down, the rope was no longer in sight, and I was still in a lot of current. So I decided to get up to the surface, have to stop about 30 feet as what we call a safety stop. And by the time I surfaced, I could barely see the group of boats that I had been part of. They were at least a football and a half away, a field length away. Unbeknownst to me, shortly after I had gotten into the water, one of the divers in the other boat, one of the other two boats, had been flipped into the back of the dive boat as it lost its bow anchor and slashed his leg, and was bleeding profusely. This meant that there was all call to arms, and everybody's attention was on that dive boat as I came to the surface and yelled for help. No one could hear me. I had a whistle, but every time I went to blow it, a large wave came and completely enveloped me. Time continued. I got further and further away till the point I could not see the boats at all. Again, training kicked in. I dropped the dive weights that I had so that I would have greater buoyancy. I filled my vest with air. I got off of my air tank and put my mouth into the snorkel and waited. That began about 3 hours of my lost at sea experience. Very quickly, I became disoriented. I didn't know which was west, which was south, which was east. I was caught up in the swells that went up and down and up and down. And I'm not a particularly good sailor, so I found myself seasick. Not a very comfortable feeling when you're out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Morehead City is on the edge of the shipping lanes of the Atlantic, and so I was quickly being pulled out into the Atlantic Ocean in the shipping lanes. And in that area is also known to be really infested with sharks. As I sat there contemplating my fate, and trying to get reoriented as to what I should be doing and what I could do for myself. That was when I really had to reach out and pray to God for help. Initially, I was philosophical. I was comfortable in the water. I knew that somebody would eventually discover I was missing and someone would come looking for me. After a while, probably after the first hour or so, I said to God, "You know, God, this is not fun anymore. I need your help." Well, about that time, I felt something very large, aquatic, and underwater hit my leg, and thoughts of sharks again returned. And I prayed more fervently for his intervention into my safety. Cutting towards the end of the prolonged 3-hour period of time, I was finally rescued by the Coast Guard and taken to a Coast Guard station for physical and triage, a mandatory action when anyone is rescued after being lost at sea. That process brought me to shore at the Coast Guard station, and I met two medics who are stationed at their ambulance, and they proceeded to take blood pressure, examine my eyes, and ask me a series of questions like, do I know what day it is, who is the president, and when were you born? I responded with my February 8th, 1946 birthday, and one of the medics turned to the other and said, "Wow, that is really weird." Well, I'm sort of proud of my birthday, none the least of which having been oriented to who I am. And I said, "So what's weird about my birthday?" And they said, "Well, sir, about 3 hours ago, we were called to take care of somebody who had been a diver and had had his leg slashed, and he cut his artery, and he was in serious to critical condition. And he was born on the first day, on the same day, the same month, and the same year as you." I began to hear Twilight Zone sounds in the background. There are many of you who probably don't know that reference, but it was one of those musical accompaniments to a show that talked about weird and unusual things. The odd thing through this is that as I came to the tail end of the medical assessment, my blood pressure was better than it's ever been before. I felt more cognitively sharp and aware, and I took great comfort in the knowledge that I'd had a special attention of a special power that kept me safe and brought me back to land, to my wife, my family, and it reminded me that we should not have to wait upon a critical incident that is life-threatening to remember to pull back and yell for help, guidance, and intervention from our God, the Holy Spirit, and in Jesus Christ. I hope you find these words somewhat useful to you as you focus on the priorities of the Lenten season, and I wish you well and happy Lent.